Morning, everybody. It is Wednesday here in Northern California, where your current weather is 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Sorry, I don't know the Celsius conversion if there's anybody who has Celsius as their main form of temperature measurement. But it's 55 degrees with an expected high of 89 degrees with slightly cloudy skies giving way to sunlight in the afternoon. That is your drive time update here from Northern California weather with Joe. Anyway, bear with me a minute as I post what I'm doing around. Figured I would do a little. There is another keynote this morning from Adobe for Adobe Max. I believe at 10 a.m. I'm just checking something. This is obviously it was a great. Oh no, they're already doing. Wait, is this the live one? Oh no, they're already doing something this morning. Yeah, that's okay. Honestly, only the first. What do you call it? Only the first. Oh no, this is something else. This isn't a. I don't think this is actually a keynote. Is this a keynote? I'm always so confused on how they do things after the first day. But anyway, it really doesn't matter. This is all stuff. Alternative ways to make a living. Oh, the inspiration keynote. Yeah, see, these really don't matter. This is the stuff later. Anyway. I wasn't sure, but I was thinking it was later on, which I was kind of right, just the wrong keynote. In any event, sorry, I'm going on about nothing now. Okay, you know what? All right, I see somebody as a viewer. Let me check something. This is actually very, very helpful. So, see, it shows the same 4 people in the chat. These can't be real people. This cannot be real people. Okay, if there is in fact someone viewing, because I still don't even know if that number actually means anything, do me a favor and type something in the chat, which I normally don't ask, but I want to verify what this thing is showing me, because I just don't think this thing is accurate. It doesn't make any sense. Oh, close that. I don't need Firefox open. I don't need Firefox right now. I was just trying to post that I'm doing a stream in my different Discord channels that I think actually care, which are probably not many. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to do a copy of this. I'm going to delete the old one. I don't want to be one of these people who just spams with their stuff where it's always the same thing. I don't know. I have to find out if there is a way. I don't know. There is a benefit to having it there. Early morning. Nope, that's not how you spell early. Early It is amazing I made it out of high school. It really is. It's amazing. Actually, the way my father reacted, he agreed that it's kind of amazing I made it out of high school. All right, did that? Of course it didn't post. I don't understand Discord sometimes. Discord at times is the most wonderful thing to use, and at others it is utterly baffling in how it decides to do things. I just don't get it sometimes. I mean, I love it. Don't get me wrong. I love this thing. It really was a lifesaver during the pandemic, but sometimes it behaves really, really strangely. Oh, actually, I got started early this morning. Oh, that's good. That's good. By the way, I'm going to be revamping. This screen you're looking at is going to actually be used as a I'll be right back's thing, because I may actually have to pause today. I have something coming from FedEx, and at least I like to be very fair about this when I say it. At least in this part of California, I know people will say the same thing about FedEx and UPS depending on where they are. But in Northern California, FedEx does not wait long for you to get to the door. They seem to, I mean, there was one day, this is not an exaggeration when I say it, they claimed that nobody was here when my wife and I were both at home, and there is no way that they ever rang the doorbell. There just simply is not. They would have to demonstrate, and the camera shows they didn't, because we have a camera. Shows they never rang it. So that one, now, I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, because I'm sure that there are good FedEx drivers, and in different places it's inverse, where people will say, no, FedEx is great, UPS is terrible. I'm not gonna argue with anybody on the merits of that. I'm not going to call anybody a liar. I'm not going to say that anybody is incorrect, and I don't want to say that all XYZs are the same. So, at least here, FedEx is the one where you have to be right on top of it. So, If they ring the doorbell, I will flip to this screen and go get the door. But I realize this is really supposed to be a temporary screen. And I always start with this. So what I'm going to do is, maybe I'll do it in the next few days. Maybe I'll do it today. That'd be something fun to work on today at some point. Is do a proper, because I have the starting soon screen, but that's really a transition screen, and I don't like it. So what I think I'm going to try to do is create a looping animation that will be an actual starting soon. So instead of staring at this for 5 minutes, there will be an animation here. There will be something that plays. This is an ambitious thing. We'll see when it actually gets done. But that's my goal. So, all right, let me paste this here. Put this on the old tweeteroo. Switch back over to here. Okay, and do a retweet there. Let me do a quick block on Twitter of, what's the word for it? Stupid stuff I don't care about. For all the problems Twitter has, I do love that block button. It's great. Yes. Okay, I understand. Thank you. All right. Well, that actually confirms that my phone speaker is working, because sometimes it likes to just not work. Okay, here we go. I've now posted everywhere that needs to be posted, and we can get started. So this is what's called starting soon. And see, this is more of a transition thing. So I want to make this a transition state to the actual drawing. So there will be an animation here as well, but I want to have something that's more persistent for the 5 minutes or so that I usually end up talking in the beginning, because I just think it makes more sense. Anyway, like I said, not anything important. Certainly not any. Did I turn my keyboard off? I don't want to keep pressing. Okay. The standing thing, by the way, yesterday that I tried worked pretty well. It worked better than I thought it would. I'm not doing that today because I've already been doing stuff and walking around, so I'm fine sitting today. But it did work. Okay. So, back to our little rings, which means I have to dial this down to, I believe, 3. Let's do a check. Oh, you know what I didn't look at? Oh, there's no way they're playing this early. I was going to say, I do have to see when the Yankees are playing, because astonishingly, they've made it to the actual playoffs, which I'm surprised, because I love the Yankees, but they are just not, they don't play till 4:37. Okay. Oh, Verlander. Oh, boy. Yeah, they're probably going to lose. But that's all right. Whatever. They made it. That's, I didn't think they were going to make it, so I'll give the credit where it's due. People are like, oh, you're a fair weather fan. No, I'm just pragmatic. I don't buy, my fandom, does not make me somehow unrealistic about the world. So I can like the Yankees, but still understand that they are not a perfect team. And I don't just assume that they're going to win everything. Some people, I mean, I guess you could say this about all fandom of all things. Some people just go a little bit off their rocker. Not me. I try to just say, okay, yeah, there's good players, and they're doing well this time, but I also don't count on anything. I think that's a really bad thing to do. You can be a fan without being a delusional one, I guess is the way to put it. So let's keep going with our rings. I'm going to stream for probably about an hour, maybe a little less. And I may, like I said, if I suddenly say, be right back, that means that FedEx has arrived, and I will have to bolt out the door. I actually put a sign on the door saying, please ring twice, because sometimes it sticks. It doesn't stick, but that's a way to make them actually ring the bell twice, which means that when I hear it the first time, it will give me enough time to get there by the time they ring the second one, so they can't ring it real quick and then count to 5 and then walk away. Hopefully, assuming they listen to that. I mean, it's really silly that I even have to do that, but that is just the reality of the world that I am existing in right now. So, whatever. Well, it still says 1 viewer, but I didn't see anything pop up in the chat, so I don't know that that's real. And I don't know why it would show up as 1 viewer, unless it's counting me looking at the previews. It just doesn't make sense. Little things, not that it matters. I don't foresee any day where I'm ever going to have that many viewers. I just don't. But, I mean, I don't promote it well. Don't get me wrong. I don't exactly do good promotion. And there's, I'm sure, far more entertaining and interesting. I gotta figure out a better background, too. This background is not tremendously good. I think what I may have to do is some kind of... I don't know. It's an okay background. I don't know. Maybe... I guess I should ask this question. If there is, in fact, anybody watching. If the viewer number is, in fact, accurate. Is this background bad? Because, I don't know. The more I look at it, it doesn't look great. You know what? That background is bad. I actually don't care what the answer is. I don't think it works fine as a background for something, but I may have to put something back there too. I mean, that's my problem. Is this is not my what's the word for it? It's not a natural thing for me to do streaming this way, because I just don't generally consider myself to be a video-centric person. So I'm sort of just spitballing it. Not sort of. I am spitballing it in many ways, and that includes kind of the background. So I guess, you know what I'll do? Because I'll probably have a little downtime today. I should. So I think I will work on doing some improvements to this and see if I can dial this in a bit, because it kind of needs it. Kind of needs to be a little different than it is, I think. I should figure out some other way to... No, well, whatever. Can't do it now. I was going to say some other... I have to figure something else out for... Oh, that might work. Never mind, may have solved my own problem. I saw that there were some announcements this week of new Apple hardware. Apparently new iPads and new Apple TVs. And oh! Hey, Faint Waves. Mail is tricky on every side these days. Yeah, I mean, that you're right. I don't disagree that it is hit or miss with everything. But it's funny because with FedEx and UPS specifically, the mail delivery people, we almost never have the same ones anymore. So that literally is a coin toss. Yeah, as far as good and bad. And it is amazing. We did finally get one of those big mailboxes where you can open it for large stuff, because they were trying to, I mean, ridiculous things that were being done. Where you sit there and go, why? Why would you do that? But with FedEx and UPS, it does seem like it's actually the service, because FedEx is baffling. FedEx here. Oh, wait a minute. What was I had a question. What was the question? Okay, well, that proves there's a viewer, so that was good. Oh, is this background crappy? Is it too distracting with all the elements? Should I put a background that is more kind of a general, not necessarily a pattern, but something where it is with less of the stuff floating around, I guess would be the question for it. Because I don't know, I threw this background together very quickly, and I've just kind of left it, but I don't know if it really works all that well. I don't know. That's kind of a broader question. Damn it, I accidentally tapped the screen, obviously. But with FedEx and UPS specifically, what's interesting is UPS, and don't get me wrong, there are, I've seen on the camera that people have thrown the whole throwing the package thing. I've seen that from UPS, yes. That's absolutely happened. That just seems to be something where if you get a bad driver or one who doesn't care, they will destroy your package in transit. Absolutely, that's happened. So I'm not trying to paint UPS as somehow angelic. They're not. But one thing about UPS is if it says that there's going to be a delivery, let's say today, let's say or Saturday. Let's say I order something today, it says it's going to be delivered Saturday. That delivery will come on Saturday, one way or another. It will show up. FedEx, I think the imagery is okay, but yeah, the stuff floating around. I think I'm going to leave the tape deck, but you know what I think I'm going to do? I think I'm going to make the background a uniform image behind the circle, and I think I'm going to make it either monochrome or faded back like that background image. I think that background image, because it's faded back, isn't too busy, but I think I'm going to do something else. I just don't know what, but I got to figure that out. And what I might do is move the words as well into a more consolidated square or pane, as opposed to going across the top, because I think they sort of get lost a little bit in the top there. I think for the game streams, I'll leave it like that, because I have the game stream. Obviously, that's full screen, so I don't think the words are a problem in the game streams. But I think for this, I'm going to collapse those words down to probably a what's the word for it? Their own dedicated box, probably on the left, where it will just have those links there. Because honestly, they're all the same. I mean, they all say it's all Ozone Art Foundry. So it's almost like I could just say, pick your service, put /Ozone Art Foundry. I know it doesn't work that way. Or maybe I'll just put a Linktree link, a single address, as a Linktree, and then the website. That might be so. Maybe collapse it down to just 2. I got to figure that out. I got to see if... I just got to figure out the best way to do it. But yeah, the background does look busy to me. It worked at first because I didn't want it just to be a black background, but yeah, the tape deck I like. I like the tape deck because, I made it. So I like the tape deck. And that look, it's rewinding. I do love the fact that the thing is animated, and I made that actually work okay, because I'm not a good animator. I'm really not. So the fact that I got, and the amount of time that I spent trying to make sure that those, because I did that all in Premiere Pro, I think. Yeah, Premiere Pro. And making sure that Premiere Pro does some really bizarre things in terms of how it centers certain things. It's really, at some point I got to wrap my head around how Premiere Pro does some of the stuff that it does, because it doesn't make sense to me as somebody who works with grids and center points and anchor points very often. It doesn't really make a lot of sense on how Premiere Pro arranges its things. So to get those circles, even though at that scale, because it's the actual source file is, I think 1920 by 1080 is the tape deck's actual size. It's huge. You can't see it as much in that small scale, but for a while I couldn't get the black tape to look centered on the spinning, on the, what do you call those? Spindles? The spindles. So it was a nightmare, and it really was only because if I've been doing it in Photoshop, and I know you can animate through Photoshop, but it's really not a very, at least the way I know how to do it, it's not very elegant, and it takes a lot of time. Whereas Premiere does make it simpler. It's almost like you increase the level of difficulty and frustration as you step down from certain products. So After Effects, I know, is where you're supposed to do this stuff. That's kind of for character animation, now they have that character animator thing. But After Effects is really where I would assume most pros would say that's where you want to do your animation stuff. You have the most control, you have the most options, and it's built for it. I agree. It's also a nightmare to learn because it's so powerful that if you really don't have a sense of it pretty quickly, it becomes extremely frustrating to figure out. Now, that's just me. I'll admit, I haven't sat down and dedicated a week to learning After Effects because I just haven't had the need, and that's part of the problem. But also, it's just Premiere Pro then is a little less difficult, but a little less powerful. And then you can animate in Photoshop, and that is, to me, the most aggravating way to do it. It's just not... I've done it a few times. It sort of works for how I know how to do it, but it's not great. So I know there are people who are pros in this stuff. And I do this too with Photoshop, where people will say, well, how do you do this in Photoshop? And I'm like, oh, that's easy. Well, sure, it's easy. I've been using Photoshop for, wow, let's see, hold on. Over 30 years. So yeah, for me, and even I would not be considered a Photoshop pro. At least I wouldn't call myself one, because there's still things that I do in ways that I know that people who work in Photoshop professionally would just be horrified by. For example, not really using masks. I know how masks work. I understand the argument for them, but I still barely ever use them. I do more destructive editing, which is something that professionals don't generally like to do. But it gets the stuff I need to get done. So it's one of those things where it's like, well, whatever gets the job done. Running the same thing with video editing. Yeah, I mean, I've been messing around. I feel fairly comfortable in Premiere Pro, but I know that the things that I'm doing, people who are actually professionals or would be instructors in Premiere Pro would say, "Oh, you're doing this in such a inefficient way." That's really what they'll talk about, is because I've gone to Max and I've heard them talk about some of the ways, and I've spoken to some of these people, the actual trainers there, and they'll say, "Well, yeah, you can do it that way, but it just takes a lot longer and it's very inefficient." Which I have no doubt they're correct. I'm not in any way saying that what I'm doing is the right way to do it, but it's the way that it gets what the bare bones video editing that I'm doing done, and that's why I do it. It's because I'm not doing advanced stuff. I'm not doing a ton of video editing. I really do want to start messing around, and I probably will be able to in the near future with kind of doing color grading and a little bit slightly more advanced editing, slightly. And then, because I've been there's some stuff that I've been looking at doing that would actually benefit from it. That's the other thing. A lot of stuff that I do for where I have to actually do video editing, it's not stuff that really requires many of the more powerful features. It just so happens that because I have the Creative Cloud, I have Premiere Pro, so I use it. But, a lot of the stuff I do doesn't have that requirement. I mean, I'm trying to think what the most... at some point I have to redo... I guess I don't have to. It works fine. So it's one of those things where I sit there and go, if it's working well enough, don't mess with it. Why are you creating more of a headache for yourself? If it works fine, just leave it alone. The intro that we have for the show YouTube channel, which, oh boy, that, if you were to see how bad that animation actually is. I mean, again, I'm sure professionals would see it immediately and go, oh, I see what he did. Why did he do that? Because I don't know what I'm doing. Especially back then, I made that years ago. Works fine, well enough, but I think it's only in 1080p, which we're not going to be going to 4K anytime soon. But if we get to a point where stuff is in actual 4K, then it would be beneficial. No matter what, it'd probably be a good idea to redo that opening animation, because now I have a better idea of how to do it than I did then. I really this is not an exaggeration, I basically accidentally created that animation the way I wanted to. I probably would not have been able to do it again a week later and accomplish the result. I know I did something that was really, really junky to get it to work. Just a really kind of cheap garbage way of animating it, but it worked. It did it, and I just went, all right, export quick, and just get the thing out, and so that I have it. And I like the intro. I mean, I do actually like it. It's simple. It represents it has the show's branding, as much as I don't like to say. It's a good representation of the brand. It's on brand, as the kids would say. It's on brand. So it works well enough. And I don't, our stuff isn't going to really change anytime soon. I really have no reason. I love the show font, the font we have for the show. Really do love that font. In fact, it's the font being used here. I purchased that font with full rights to use it. I think it's great. I really can't foresee at any point wanting to change it, because I'm not one of those people who feels like you have to refresh things very often. I know you're supposed to, I guess, but as long as it's functional, I think. Well, that's the only way it's going to work. Artwork, some of this good from my hands. In CS2, people have even paid me. Yeah, well, that's it, right? I mean, that's kind of the thing. Is there's a what's the word for it? There is this impulse I think a lot of creators have to constantly be doing things in a better way. And I think it's beneficial to some degree to have that drive, but it also is kind of that don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Some phrase like that, where there's a point where, okay, refinement without an actual tangible result or benefit, I guess, is pointless. There's really not a reason to be competent in the 18 different functions of something if you only ever need 3 to accomplish what you want to do. I actually like your artwork. I've seen that stuff. I like, if you're talking about your cover artwork and that type of thing, I like it. I don't think it's not like I think a lot of my artwork is good and people like it. So it is one of those things where you sit there and go, well, whatever. Like I said, I don't use masks the way I know people think I should. I've had people tell me, oh, you should really be using masks because, you're doing destructive editing and that just, it wastes time because you have to go backwards. And they're right, because I have had to go back and redo things that I know I did. I'm going to mute for a second because I have to cough really quick. There we go. So I know masks would have saved me time on certain things, but it's not that often, and I don't really care. Clean, cool water. So I don't. There are times where masking works, but masking sometimes doesn't feel like it actually saves me time. I don't know. It's hard to quantify it right, and I think some of it is just the way that I work. Which that's another thing is, most people nobody really creates in the same way. And so there's always going to be what's the word for it? There's always going to be some limit to how a tool was created and how it benefits somebody even under its optimal use. And that's just, that's because, especially it's not like programming, where, programming languages work a certain way. You can definitely bend programming languages to certain ways, to certain things that you want to do, I mean. But you're going to have the same commands. Those commands aren't going to change. So it's not like the more, I don't know what the word for it is, because the more purely creative stuff like music, writing, visual arts, that type of thing. If you tell two programmers to program, let's say, an app to show the weather every day at noon, those two people, now they may have different code that they write to do it. They may execute the commands in different ways, but functionally they're going to, oh, that's FedEx telling me my package is out for delivery. Okay, yeah, well, if you ring the doorbell, I will be here to sign for it. So let's see. But I appreciate the email. Thank you. Thank you for telling me what I already knew. Let's see if you actually ring the doorbell. So those two people, those two programmers, they're going to use certain common commands. Right? I mean, if you tell them that I need you to program an app for Android or iOS that goes out and does a lookup of the weather every day in the location that the person's in and report it back as a widget on the screen, they're going to be using their stuff might be in a different order. They may take a different route to get to the information. They may display it differently, but they're going to be using the same commands. Whereas if you go to two illustrators or two musicians and say, for the illustrators, I want you to draw me an image of a peach wearing a top hat doing target practice, right? And that's what you say. It's very, very likely, yes, they'll both have the peach and they'll both have top hats, but, so I guess you could call those common, no, you know what, sorry. No, I guess if you're saying get the weather, maybe that is a good analogy. So yeah, they'll both have the same peaches, but it will be so wildly different, likely. I mean, unless these are two people who happen to draw in the same style, which sort of negates the experiment. But there's very little chance that those two images are going to look anything alike. Very little chance. I mean, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but where was I going with this? Where did this come from? Oh, so that's what I mean about the tools are developed with a certain approach in mind, but that approach is going to immediately change in the hands of the person doing the actual creation. So there is no right way or best way to do anything. It's whatever accomplishes what you're after. So yeah, because when I watched the Max keynotes, I'm always looking at some of the stuff these people are doing because they're showcasing it, obviously. I'm sitting here going, wow, I should be doing more of that. No, I shouldn't. I mean, even if I thought I could, I shouldn't. That's not what I do. But I do, it does immediately spark this drive in me to go, oh, I should be creating more. No, that's not a good idea either. You have to understand what your creative rhythm is work within it. I do think everybody should be creating stuff, but I don't think there are people, and I know these people, who feel like if they don't draw every day, something's wrong. And I'm sitting there going, I mean, if that's what you really think, okay. But I feel like a lot of people who say that, because I've talked to people who've said, oh, if I don't draw every day, then, then something's wrong. And I'm sitting here thinking, the way you're saying that to me right now, that feels more like you feel like you have to be drawing, as opposed to actually naturally wanting to draw. Almost the same way that I do my Duolingo lessons every day for Italian. And most days I actually really enjoy them, and it definitely has made it where I can read Italian really well again, because I used to when I was younger, and I lost it when I got older, because my father's parents, because my dad's mother and father were immigrants. They were off the boat Italians who really, I mean, my grandfather, I don't think ever really spoke English functionally. He had passable phrases. And my grandmother could speak some English, but really didn't like to. She liked to stick to Italian. And when they died, because they died pretty young, my father stopped speaking Italian because there wasn't anybody else. And I spoke it when I was young fluently because I often stayed with my grandmother. So I had a good command of it, but like my father, like, we didn't talk to each other in Italian because my mother doesn't speak it. So it would have been kind of rude to be speaking in a language she couldn't understand. So we didn't do it. We kind of did it for a while, and then we stopped. And so I lost it. So I want to get it back, because I was always just competent enough. Because when we went to Italy, when friends of mine and I went, oh boy, that's now 21 years ago, which was long after, my grandparents and I'd stopped speaking it. I was able to navigate us just enough. I had the functional stuff, the basics down, but I had to really think about what I was saying, and I wasn't able to read everything very well. I could recognize, for example, I knew where a bathroom was because I knew the word for bathroom. I could say, where is the bathroom? I had those basic phrases down, or where is the train station? How much does something cost? I could, but even there, it was probably to them very broken and mispronounced. Basically it would not have fooled anyone that I was a native speaker, and it wouldn't today either. I still, the spoken part is always the part I get tough, because that's tough for me to get, because I don't think, my brain doesn't work very well. Well, let's just put it like that. So reading it, I can read it easily. I mean, I can read it easily to the point where, outside of words that are not familiar, because maybe they're non-common words, for example, if you put something in front of me that says, good morning, I'm here and I would like to buy a tractor trailer, I'm going to get all that except for tractor trailer, because I don't know what Italian for tractor trailer is. You tell me you want to buy a motorcycle, and I'll understand it. Voglio compro, or voglio compro la motocicletta is I want to buy a motorcycle. Okay, I can understand. Now, saying it would have to be at that speed, it goes too fast, I'm lost. But what was I watching? I was watching the newest Dario Argento movie, and it's in Italian with subtitles. And I was really making an effort to not look at the subtitles. And when the words were spaced out, I could get them. When they were talking quickly, I was lost, and I had to go to the subtitles. So I would catch words here and there that would make sense, but I can't follow it when it's fast. And I don't know, that's going to take a long time, because the only problem with the Duolingo stuff, and that's why I'm looking at, there was another app that had more actual vocal stuff. So I may end up switching to that, where there's more, because I've long since lost touch, but there was a friend of mine from high school who was an Italian exchange student, and I used to write her letters or emails back and forth, and that was helpful because, she was just speaking normally, and then in the times that I would talk to her here and there, she would, go back and forth, and that was helpful. But again, there's just nobody around me who really speaks Italian now. It's not highly common in California. If I was still in New York, it would probably be more common. I would probably be able to find more people who speak the language. It's just not that common out here because the Italian communities in California are more spaced out. They're not as all over the place. Whereas, of course, with Spanish, because there are more Spanish-speaking people in general, and the stores have things in Spanish as well as English. So it's very easy there to kind of start to figure things out just by osmosis. You go into a store and you see English and Spanish. So, for example, my sister, who took Spanish instead of Italian, she would be able to, if she lived here, very easily kind of, you start putting things together because you see them. So if you see the English and the Spanish right underneath each other, you start to make associations quicker. Still, nothing will beat speaking to someone in a native language a lot, but it's still, you get more out of seeing it next to each other. But although I can understand a lot of Spanish because, of course, Spanish and Italian are highly related languages. So a lot of words are very similar. Strangely, some words that don't make sense to me, why they would be so wildly different. I don't understand where the divergence happens sometimes, because a lot of Spanish is very close to Italian, which makes sense. They are related Romantic languages. But then you'll get to, so you'll be going on a sentence and it's like pop, 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 and much of it is the same. It's like 85 to 90% the same type of word so that you can follow along. And then you suddenly slam up against a word that is completely different. I'm sure a linguist would be able to explain to me why that is. I have no doubt there is a reason. But to me, as somebody without that linguist background and knowledge and, the etymology of the words, it makes no sense. It's strange. I just sit there and go, why would this sentence, if you wrote these two sentences next to each other, they're extremely similar except for one or two words. Why would those one or two words, and I mean, again, I'm not a language major. I'm not a professor of Romantic languages or speech. So maybe there is a very good reason for it, but to me as just a dummy who's looking at sentences next to each other, I will sit there and say, why are these words so wildly different? It's really strange. I don't know. And I can't come up with an example off the top of my head, but there are. But a lot of it is very similar. So even with just knowing Italian, there's a lot of Spanish that I can pick up enough so that I could navigate. If I'm in a store and I see Spanish signs, a lot of times I can pretty successfully figure out what they're saying. But other times not, and I really don't know why. Like I said, because I know there is a lot of overlap in the languages. Because I'll do that with Lando sometimes. Lando speaks very good Spanish because similar, except with him it's his mother and his father when he was alive. They were direct immigrants, so they speak Spanish, or spoke Spanish in his father's case, a lot. So Lando can jump back and forth easily. I mean, there are some gaps in his too, because most of his life... Actually, I have to ask him if he's gonna... I don't know if he speaks Spanish with his kids. I don't actually know that. I'll have to ask him on the next show. Or next time I talk to him. I will have to ask him if he speaks Spanish with his kids or not. I honestly don't know. I would just assume that he probably does, but I don't actually know that. I've never actually asked that question. He speaks Spanish to me sometimes and listens to my horrifically mispronounced Spanish. I can't roll my R's. I can't do any of that stuff, so my Spanish is terrible. My Italian also is probably very, very bad in terms of actual pronunciation. But at least they would know what I'm saying. They would be able to understand what I'm saying. Let me think. That would be probably be Potivano, Capiscono, cosa dice. They would be able to understand what I'm saying. Now, a native Italian speaker would probably hear that and be like, I get tenses. Tenses are tough. The whole past tense I've finally gotten down because that's generally with an AV. So if I say metavo, that means I put past tense. Not I am putting. Meto is I am putting. So meto I piatti sul tavolo is I'm putting actively plates on the table. Metavo I piatti sul tavolo is I put the plates on the table. I'm starting to get that. But there's little weird traps in the language that I just still really struggle with, as far as there's certain types of tenses within certain types of words that really just trip me up. And I don't know, it's just going to take me a long. This is where, again, if I was speaking to somebody where I could bounce this off of them and talk to them all the time, I would probably benefit. And I think there is another language app that does have that particular thing where you can actually speak to people or do more spoken stuff. And I think I'm getting close to the point where that's what I need to really, get more towards where I want to be. Because I don't need to be fluent. I don't know that I'm ever going to be a fluent. I just don't think my brain works that way. I don't think I have that functional ability. I don't think I can learn that way. Short of being completely in that environment. If I went over and lived in Italy for a couple of years, yeah, of course. Then I think I would pick it up really fast and I would be able to do it. But when it comes to just trying to keep things together in my head, I don't think my brain... I'm not a particularly good student in general, so I don't think I can do that. I don't think. So I think that I'm never going to be fluent, but I'd like to have at least a working vocabulary and be functional in it. And I think I'm fairly close to that in terms of literacy, in terms of being able to read it. Because there are certain things that, I'm trying to remember, it was some kind of conditioner or something that my wife bought, and there was a section in Italian. And, I basically, she had 2 bottles of it, because one was almost empty and there was a full one, and I basically covered up the English, and I said, okay, I'm going to read this. And I got a lot of it right. Enough that the point would be conveyed. But I know there's little things, like I said, with the tenses, and some of that would probably be important, as if I had to talk to somebody, the difference between saying I bought a ticket or I'm speaking to someone or will be speaking to someone as opposed to I spoke to someone. Well, that really matters depending on what you're saying and who you're saying it to. So the tenses are important, and that's where I would probably get tripped up. I could probably do past tense pretty good right now, because I could say parlavo, I spoke, but I will be speaking to. I don't know if that's parlero. I have a feeling I'm wrong about that. Would be I will be speaking to. Because, for example, if I was saying to somebody, if I said to somebody, well, I'm not feeling well, I spoke to the doctor about it, that's a lot different than saying I will be, because one says, okay, I'm waiting for a result or whatever, and the other is, well, I haven't even gotten looked at yet. You know what I mean? So that, don't get me wrong, I don't know who I would be telling in Italian that I'm going to be talking to a doctor at any point in the near future, but that's what I'm getting across, is that's where the weakness in the language is. So, in any event, I don't know where this even came from in speaking Italian. I don't know why did I even start talking about that? I don't remember. Another phrase I use a lot, I don't remember. I have no memory. It's a good thing I don't smoke a lot of weed or anything, because if I did that, I probably would have even less memory than I do. I think in some ways my biology has steered? There's no other word for it, right? There's no other word for past tense of steer. It's not storn. Even though steered doesn't sound right. That's another thing with English. Some of these words just don't sound right. But my biology has in the past managed to steer me, sounds a lot better, away from certain things that would probably make my already existing deficiencies worse. So I've never developed a taste for alcohol. I've never had any use for drugs, which is probably good, because I think if I was heavily into one of the or the other of those things, it would probably not be beneficial for me. Is that a dot? Yes. Let me get rid of that little dot right there. Well, I see it. There we go. Oh. Where'd you guys come from? I must have tapped the screen. Bye. There we go. Probably in the course of me talking and moving my hand around, I tapped the screen there. Anyhow. Yeah. Oh boy, I have no memory as it is. I mean, I really have to rely on so many other things to be able to remember anything. Like my phone. I would never remember birthdays or anything like that. Anniversaries, nothing. I wouldn't have any command in any of that stuff. Just not very good in the memory department. Which I'm sure is going to be just great in terms of what my likelihood for developing Alzheimer's or something like that is in the future. So there's that to look forward to. But what are you going to do? What are you going to do? It's what it is. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. There's no way to know. I am taking a bit of a risk here by assuming that this line is going to work. But if it doesn't, I can always erase it. Because I don't quite know where I'm going with that line, so we'll see. Yeah. But yeah, memory, that's what I mean about with not having the fluency is because, I know my memory is just not fantastic. So, but I can recognize things. Good pattern recognition, though. That's why I think I can do the words, or the written words, better than the spoken stuff. But it's fun learning a language, even if I'm not really good at it. It does feel like it's probably brain exercise, which is good. Because, like I said, I'm just based on family history and my own shoddy memory. I'm probably staring down the barrel of some kind of brain problem later. Assuming cancer don't get me first. Got a lot of that too, so one or the other. So it's sunny days either way for the future health outlook. But at least I'm doing, because I know they say it's important, brain exercises. I like to do crosswords, that type of thing. But I don't do them that often. I don't often just sit down with a coffee and do a crossword. It's always one of those things you see in commercials and TV and movies where a person sits down in this wonderful vista with their coffee and they do their crossword. I always want to do that, but for some reason I never quite do it. But I always like when I see that, I go, yeah, that looks like a lot of fun. Just go out in the morning, listen to the birds chirp, drink the coffee, and do a crossword. Nothing stopping me from doing it. It's just something I don't do. It's one of those things where I look at it and go, yeah, that looks really fun. And then I never do it. So, not blaming anybody, not saying there's any reason for that. It's just never works out that way. There's always something I end up doing instead. But every time I see it, I'm like, yeah, I should really just sit down outside. And actually, I probably can do it at some point soon. I say that, but I won't. But it's always one of those things I like to see. I always find that to be a peaceful, aspirational thing to do in the morning, is to sit down with a coffee and do a crossword. I like crosswords. But crosswords are very hit or miss for me on whether I'm actually any good at them or not. I gotta get, I'd say, a good 10 words in the right position, and then I can usually knock the rest of it out. I can figure it out. But it depends on the crossword too. Some are so reliant on knowing certain things. Like, I don't know opera singer names or famous operas outside of certain big ones. So when they say, oh, famous opera singer known for Madame Butterfly, I don't know who sang that, or what year that was from, or, year that, oh, I don't know, they wouldn't do year, they don't use numbers, but state that had 4 national NBA championships in a row between 1974 and 5. I don't know. I have no idea. Whereas if they, I like the ones where there's a couple of words that could fit it, maybe, oh, what is there's one that was used in a movie or something like that. Like the Shaun of the Dead thing where, the woman's doing the crossword and another word for an old witch, hag, that type of thing. Oh, those I'm good at. But yeah, when they start getting into history and knowing and knowledge like that, I don't know. I don't remember. Even if I did know, I probably wouldn't remember. So, okay, this thing is coming along. I do like this skull. Boy, every time I start one of these, even when there's a longer stream, I think, oh, maybe I'll get it all done this time. No, I'm not going to get it all done. It takes forever to do these lines. I always tend to forget, and of course I stop and just sit there and babble about stuff. So it's going to take a while, but that's okay. This is a good October drawing. Spooky skull. Not even spooky, really. The skull does not strike me as particularly spooky. It's like, ha! It's a happy skull. I mean, depending on how you look at it. But it's not a scary skull. It's not a spooky skull. It's just a skull. It's just a grinning skull. Skull that could be from somebody who died mid-tap dance. You know, that type of thing. I don't know if I'm certain somebody's had a heart attack while tap dancing. I was going to say, has anybody actually died while tap dancing? Of course they have. People have heart attacks doing everything. People have heart attacks, you know, getting a tic tac. So I am sure in the span of history, somebody has died tap dancing. How many have done it on stage in front of people might be a different thing. But I would guess it'd probably be somebody practicing at home and they just keel over and that's it. The great irony is no matter how fit you may be and all the stuff you do, random things just happen. So, amazing. Where extraordinarily fit people just drop. That's how it goes. Whoa, big zoom out there. Okay, so how do I want to do this? I think I'm just gonna have the lines go into the black. Yeah. I'm not gonna worry. Well, not like that though. That's too much of a. There we go. Okay. There we go. Yep. Do those little lines. Try to give them a little bit of personality, even though they're being cut off, essentially. Okay, how big is that brush? Oh, no, I'll go to the bigger brush for that. I don't need it to be that small. You know what? I just thought to myself, hey, you know, the screen sharing hasn't cut out, which I feel like is just a jinx. It's just like, that's exactly what you don't want to say, because it's going to cut out any second. Although, again, now this Twitch Studio, it's holding around 50% on CPU, which is pretty good. Compared to what it used to be, it's real. Actually, I shouldn't even say pretty good. That's really good for the way it used to be. I really think that was impacting the program. I think once the CPU hit the max out, that's when the thing would drop. And since it hasn't... I heard a rumble in the background, singer going, ah! Is that FedEx? Ah! But can't get like that, because I'll jump it every single time a truck goes by. Because we're on a semi... Ah! See? That's what I get for opening my eyes. Man, that's not a joke. I didn't do that. That did it itself. It's why I shouldn't have said anything. Of course, the minute I said, oh, it hasn't dropped in a while, CPU spikes to 100% for no reason. Zero reason. And it does that. I mean, you can't make it up. You can't make it up, I'm telling you. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Right after I said that, the thing decides to spike. I mean, come on. You understand why people will say, no, that computer's actively doing something. Because stuff like that will make you go, no, it's listening. And it's like, oh, yeah? Yeah, you liked having a nice stable stream, did you? Bang. Kick to the knees. I mean, it doesn't matter. It picks it right back up. But it's just funny because I literally just said I shouldn't say that out loud or it's going to jinx it. And it spikes to 100. Now it's down at 50. Why? What is the reason? I don't mind when things happen, but it drives me crazy when I don't know why. That does bug me. I always say that. I'm like, I don't care that something is not working as long as I know why it's not working and I can identify what I have to do. Because things will stop working, but that's inexplicable. And for it to happen right after I said that, you sit there and go, okay, you know, okay. But whatever. It's okay. No problem. So yeah, I'm going to listen to Adobe stuff in the background today because there's more stuff going on. The other nice part is you can listen to it later. I do like the fact that if you miss a session for some reason, you can pick it up later. But what time is it? Let's see. Yeah, I'll probably end this within 10 minutes or so. Been doing this for a while. Plus the iPad I think will need to get charged. Because I haven't charged in a couple of days. And doing this where the screen is on all the time. Positively, it does not get as warm as the other one did. As my previous one did. So they've definitely got the thermals in better control now. Which is good. Yeah, they announced some new iPads yesterday or the day before, but honestly, my need for new stuff has drastically changed. really don't feel like getting new stuff anymore. In fact, I mean, what FedEx is delivering today is a new phone. And actually, we'll be talking about this on the show, the Friday show. But I finally got to a point with this phone, which I really, really liked, where it's starting to do little things that signal to me that, okay, it's hitting its age. Which, unfortunately, if it was an iPhone, it would be surprising because it's almost 4 years old. iPhones last a lot longer. Android phones just don't. They just don't. At least the normal consumer affordable ones don't, unless you want to spend... Actually, I don't know. I don't even know if the big money Android phones last all that long. I'd be curious if anybody's even done any type of analysis of that, but I don't think so. It's just stuff is not built the same way because, of course, you don't have the single point of control. You don't have any company that controls... I mean, I guess the Pixel... Actually, I should say the Pixel phones, which is what's coming. I've got a Pixel 7 coming. The Pixel phones, I think, do last. Although their hardware or their software support doesn't seem to go more than 3 or 4 years, which is disappointing. You'd think that... But again, it's Google. I think mine is iPhone. Yeah, no, what do you call it? My mother had an iPhone, I don't remember what version, for, I think, 7 years before she finally broke it. So, and honestly, for a user who's not a heavy user, who isn't doing a lot of crazy stuff with it, or doesn't have a lot of power demands, I have no doubt they can last a very long time. And they do. And that's kind of true of all of Apple's hardware. That's why as maddening as a lot of things that Apple does, and I don't like a lot of things that Apple does, but if it's for a person who's not like me, like somebody like Lando, who is perfectly fine and just needs his iPhone to do the basic stuff, and really isn't what would still be considered a power user, isn't doing a lot of customization the way I am, and just has strange and wacko demands the way I do of my stuff, that his phone will last forever. I used a MacBook Pro, or my wife used one up until very recently that was 8.5 years old, and it was working fine. It just so happened that I was offered a really good deal on a much more recent MacBook Pro, which just had some cosmetic problem. It was scratched up, and that was why the person couldn't get better money for it. And I said, well, I don't care what it looks like. I'll put a decal over it, which, again, it's one of those things where you sit there and go, why would somebody not do that? Why would you not take a great price on or take a great computer for a good price if all you're talking about is superficial damage? It just got scratched up. I mean, they were deep scratches, but it had zero impact on the functionality of the machine. So I said, okay, I'll buy it from you for dirt cheap because nobody else is going to buy it for more. I mean, I'm not going to be a fool and turn down a good deal either. But when I asked him, I said, why are you selling it for this cheap? Because it seems suspicious to me. And he said, because nobody wants it, because it's scratched up. And that's apparently a big enough deal that nobody, because there's not a shortage of, a lot of people can resell their older Macs. And when I say older, I'm talking like 3 years, not really old, not a decade old machine. But because there's a lot of people upgrade their Macs and then sell the older machines and they retain their value, those cosmetic deficiencies apparently are a big deal for most buyers. And I'm like, well, it ain't for me because I know how decals work. So I will just cover it up and that will be fine. And that's exactly what I did. And the thing is great. Outside of the fact that it has the touch bar. The touch bar was never a good idea. It's, what a dumb move and a period where Apple was making a lot of dumb moves, let's be fair, between their keyboard debacle and that touch bar and some other decisions. The Johnny Ive era, I think initially was seen as, oh, this is great. This guy knows what he's doing. No, he doesn't. He's got some wacky priorities that I don't think serve the Macs very well. But he's gone now, and now they do seem to be doing some smarter things. But ultimately, their hardware, because they have total control, software, hardware side, that really helps their stuff work. Android just cannot hope for that type of control and quality level. They just can't. Because there's so many manufacturers that are doing different versions of Android. So it It just can't be done. People will argue that point, but it's inarguable because it's just a reality. And that's okay. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't bother me necessarily, because I still, ultimately, when it came up to it, I was going back and forth between iPhone, Android. And I really just still couldn't bring myself to go to iPhone, partially because I don't want to be locked into an ecosystem top to bottom. I don't. For me, I like to be able to, it's the same reason I buy an unlocked phone. Even though I could get a carrier phone for a good discount, I will never do that again. I always just buy my phones outright, because I don't even want to have to think about some of the decisions I want to make. If I ever decide that I want to jump off the carrier I'm on and move to something else, I don't want to have to worry about it. I just want to be able to do what I want to do with the stuff that I quote unquote own. Which again, when if there's a lease or whatever attached to it, you don't really own it. That's the I mean, don't get me wrong, you don't really own the software on the phone, but buying the phone outright, if I decide to completely destroy it somehow and put some kind of weird OS on it or whatever, I can do that, and I don't have to worry about anything else. I mean, I'd have to worry about whether it would work on the carrier, but it's a weird noise coming from... What is that noise? Hold on a minute, I want to check something out. I hear a noise, and I don't know what it is. Oh, I do know what it is. Okay, I forgot today. Okay, I know who it is. That's our lawn service. I completely forgot the lawn service comes today. I'm like, why do I hear a noise? It sounds like a weed whacker. Well, it is a weed whacker. That's exactly what it is. Okay, well, at least that's explained, because I'm sitting here going, I don't know what that noise is. That's what it is. I forgot. So I did actually hear something. That wasn't just me being paranoid. It's just that I forgot what day it was. It is Wednesday. Yeah, I'm going to redo that line. Let's see if I can get this to be a little bit tighter in here. So that was ultimately why I decided to go with Android phone. And one of the things that really irritates me is Apple's whole, well, we're not going to have a SIM card for the American iPhones now. That really bugs me. I mean, that really bugs me that they only did that in the United States. And I know their position on it as well. You know, that's where the industry is going to go. But you know what? There's things like the headphone jack where you can kind of see it, because there were already so many Bluetooth headphones, although a lot of people don't like the way Bluetooth headphones sound and work. So even there you sit there and go, yeah, you're forcing people onto that. But is that really the best consumer decision? Well, that's debatable. But with the eSIM thing, I recently had to deal with a carrier for something that luckily didn't affect me directly. But I mean, the amount of time you got to be on the phone when you have to call any of these cell carriers for even something simple. If for some reason my phone breaks, I just want to be able to move the card. I don't want to have to worry about that if something gets stuck or goes wrong. I got to get on the phone where they're inevitably going to try to upsell you for something. You know that they're going to try to sell you on a better, oh, you're eligible for... I don't want any of that. I just want to be able to move the SIM card from one phone to another and have the thing work. I don't want to have to sit there and tell you that I don't want XYZ plan with this. I just want my phone or whatever to be working again. And the reality is eSIM is not at a point where you can really know that that's going to be the case. There have already been reports. I mean, not a lot, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's any type of thing that's going to cause a public relations disaster for Google or for Apple or anything. But there have already been things where people talk about how much longer it takes to do eSIM stuff. You know, that it's absolutely not the 5-minute switchover that, for example, I expect to have today with the Pixel, because I'm just going to take the SIM out of my one phone and I'm just going to put it into the other one, and that's all that will happen. That's great. That's how it should be. It should be that simple for somebody to switch phones. Not having to worry about whether an eSIM transfer, if there's some kind of blip or something gets hung up or it doesn't complete for whatever reason, because maybe the carrier's got a lot of traffic happening for some reason, or, one of their services is having some kind of issue and now you just can't use your phone because their eSIM thing isn't working properly. I don't want any of that. I don't want it. So that was really what ended up with the decision. And everything else about phones is pretty much equal now. You know, iPhone will say that their camera is the best, and Google will say their camera is the best. Yeah, they're both good. Whatever. You know? Is there really a big difference? I seriously doubt it. The only real difference is that, yeah, if you're in an Apple or now more increasingly Google's ecosystem, there is less friction about doing different things than there used to be. That's definitely true. But I don't mind those friction points because I don't want to rely on any one ecosystem for anything. So that's okay with me. All that results in, for me anyway, is slightly less convenient ways of doing things. But I am willing to pay that convenience cost. So it's okay. It doesn't bother me. Others aren't. Perfectly fine. And I mean, in the Apple side, it is extremely hard to argue against how smooth a lot of their stuff does work as part of the ecosystem. The AirDrop thing is just one example, but there's lots of others where it's like, yeah, it is really nice. It is really nice when things work that smoothly together. I'm not making an argument against that. I use AirDrop all the time for things, and would it be nice to be able to use it on my Android phone and have something equivalent with my Android phone and my Windows desktop? Yeah, it would, but that's just not the way it is. So I understand why a lot of people will put up with the things that Apple does because they do deliver services that are extremely easy to use and do save a lot of people time, and they're convenient and they're easy to understand and use. But my priorities are different than that. And I don't like the idea of ever really being trapped in an ecosystem on the off chance that there's something that ecosystem does that I don't like. I like to be able to have a nice, easy way to get around ecosystem lock-in. But I freely recognize that that's something particular to me and not most people. So that's okay. So I think what I'm going to do is finish up this section of the skull. And then we will probably wrap this stream up because I've been going for a while now. And fortunately, I've only had one so far crash of the mirroring app. Oop, let's fix that. Don't want that. That's not smooth. And then what I probably will do is start listening to some of the Adobe sessions and work on improving the backgrounds and maybe start working on some kind of animation thing for the opening of these streams, the art streams. Something that can just loop. Because the ones I have now just aren't. They loop, but they don't loop in a way that feels like they're supposed to be looping. You know what I mean? They just restart, but they don't feel seamless. And I'd like to have something like that, where there's just kind of a seamless nature to the loop where you can't really... I mean, you'll see it. Unless I were to spend weeks on an animation where it literally was seamless, or, you know, find a good template for doing something like that. Actually, there probably is a way to do something like that now that I think about it. But yeah, do want to replace make the be right back screen actually meant for I'll be right back. That doesn't happen often, but it has happened a couple times. And then have a starting soon animation that does feel like it is kind of an opening thing, and that's what it's there for. Okay, here we go. All right, well, we are getting there. That is all the major points of the skull are now filled in with rings, so it's just the teeth, really. Just got to do the teeth on the light gray areas, and then figure out what I want to do maybe with the other marks, but it's there. It's pretty much almost done, and it's a matter of figuring out what I'm going to do with this thing. I mean, I could just put it onto some kind of simple design, but I don't know. I got to figure out what I want to do with this thing. In any event, that'll do it for today's stream, which has been a nice long one. And like I said, very nice to only have one crash of the reflector software, so that's great. I have to give credit to the Twitch Studio software. Has improved massively in that way. They fixed their weird little bug, and now it doesn't seem to be using as much CPU as often, so that's fantastic. Anyway, have a good rest of your Wednesday, however much there is left of it for you. Thanks for stopping by to listen to me ramble on about nothing and do a little bit of doodling on the skull here. And yeah, have a good rest of your Wednesday and go out there and create something. Take care.